Good day, ma'am. I am Nurfaida Asarakil. In this video, I am going to discuss the development of children's literature during the 18th century. So the 18th century is often associated with the Age of Enlightenment, at a time when intellectual and philosophical pursuits reached their heights, establishing modern ideals such as liberty, progress, and happiness. But this new way of thinking also brought about significant change on the world stage and revolution both in the old world and the new one. So, children's literature can be traced to traditional stories like fairy tales that have only been identified as children's literature in the 18th century, and songs part of a wider oral tradition that adults shared with children before publishing existed. The development of early children's literature before printing was invented is difficult to trace. Even after printing became widespread, many classic children's tales were originally created for adults and later adapted for a younger audience. Since the 15th century, much literature has been aimed specifically at children, often with a moral or religious message. So, in 1720, Diver and Moral Songs for Children by Isaac Watts, which created one of the first poetry book meant for children only. One of his songs being Joy to the World, this song is still present in school performances. In 1744, a pretty realized that most children's books were only whole books, and in 1762, Emile by Jean Cos, another finder of education that we currently stay. His book Mile was an explanation of the idealization that children should recount. Reason advocated for simply and living a moral life. Next, I am going to discuss the development of children's literature at the end of the 18th century. The 18th century and most of the children's literature in the 18th century was dominated by female authors. Their focus was on moral lessons that were supposed to instruct children on ways of proper living. Most of these stories were dry, boring, or condescending to kids' moral tales for children written by Maria Edgeworth, Sarah Trimmer, Anna Letizia Barbauld, Hannah More, and Marie Martha Sherwood. Children's literature was a flourishing, separate, and secure part of the publishing industry in Britain. Perhaps as many as 50 children's books were being printed each year, mostly in London, but also in the regional centers such as Edinburgh, York, and Newcastle. So, on the last part of this video, I am going to discuss the development of children's literature that happened during the beginning, middle, and the end. So in beginning, the 19th century brought back the long-told folk tales and fairy tales that were loved by children but shied away from in the 18th century. Children's literature began to focus on writing for entertainment purposes rather than just moral lessons. So in 1812, Kinder and Horse Merchants, Children's and Household Tales by Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm. In 1827, the Youth's Companion's first publication, a magazine geared for children. In 1835, Fairy Tales by Hans Christian Andersen. Moreover, the 19th century middle, in 1865, Alice's Adventure in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This book is often seen as the first book written purely for entertainment purposes. The captivating characters and the wild fantasies are still being recreated and told today in recent movies geared for both children and adult audiences. Hence, the end of the 19th century is when children's literature really came into its own and continued to develop in the 20th century. In 1877, The Baby's Opera by Walter Crane is children illustrations. So in 1878, John Gilpin's Ride by Randolph Caldecott, children's illustration also. And in 1888, The Pied Piper of Hamelin by Kate Greenaway, children's illustration also. That's all.